Department has announced that the U.S. has reached the debt ceiling. We knew this was coming. Janet Yellen warned us last week that it was going to happen today, Thursday.
On Thursday.
Yeah,
that's right. Taking a live look at the big board right now, you can see stocks are relatively flat, down 0.5 percentage point. I want to bring in Joe Saluzzi. He's the co-founder and co-head of Themis Trading. I also want to bring in CBS News reporter Sarah Ewell-Weiss now to break it all down. She's been following this story for us.
She's going to be joining us soon, but we're going to start things off with Joe.
All right, Joe. So let's give our viewers some context here. Market is flattish. I mean, it's down slightly. It's expected, given, as Anne-Marie pointed out, that this news was expected. But just give us the context of why the market is actually even in a gyration at all.
I think, we've seen, I've been a trader for a while. I've been on Wall Street for a while. We've seen this game before. We've seen it many, many times where the debt limit comes out and, everybody starts to get a little excited about it. And then usually, and always, it gets solved. Not usually, always, because we can't run a country without doing this. So it's a bit of a game, I think, at this point, that they'll be playing with each other on the Hill. But it looks like, Janet Yellen just came out saying they could extend some special measures to keep this thing going for a while. So I would imagine that we'll have the story out there for a while. But I really don't think that Wall Street takes this seriously. They think it will be solved. If there was a crisis and we actually weren't able to pay our debt holders, well, then we got a major problem. And you'd be seeing a market reacting way more than what you're seeing right now.
Yeah, because I guess we have come to this point several times, and they always sort of yank things back in the 11th hour. But, that being said, we're looking at a different political landscape. What are we to make? I know it's just a 0.5 percentage point, but also the announcement just came out. What are we to make of that then? Is it just kind of this emotional outburst?
Yeah, I think today's market actually really is not affected. It's not the debt limit story today. It's more, we have some numbers this morning. Unemployment numbers are out and a little bit weaker yesterday on retail sales. So the markets are still doing their thing and waiting on the Fed and so on. But to your point, I think, the House, the vote for the Speaker of the House was a big deal, right? And it went longer than expected. So some people are a little cautious as, okay, maybe they might play a little bit more of a game here and it may drag this thing out a little longer, considering if you use that as a precedent. But it will get solved. And I don't think there's any question that anybody on Wall Street thinks that this thing will be fixed and it'll be done. We'll go on to the next problem.
All right, let's bring in Sarah Ewell-Weiss. She's joining us on the telephone. So, Sarah, you just heard Joe saying that what we're seeing in the stock market is really not even related to what is happening in Washington, D.C. But just talk to us about this looming battle between Republicans and Democrats to try and get this done.
Sure. I like Joe's optimism at this point in time. And he's right. Today's stocks are reacting to other things predominantly, especially with this letter literally just coming out that the secretary sent over to leaders of Congress. But this does set up a showdown between Democrats and Republicans on the Hill to get this done. And while they've never been unable to reach an agreement, they have come down to the wire multiple times in the past, and that is what makes people nervous in the long term. But the reality is we are, as Anne-Marie said, in a different landscape on the Hill, where Republicans have a majority in the House, but a very small majority, and there's a growing number of real hardliners when it comes to Republicans who say they're unwilling to raise the debt limit or suspend the debt limit without major cuts. While Democrats have said there are some places where they can reach agreement. There are some hard lines there when it comes to certain programs that Democrats said they will not negotiate over, and those include things like Social Security and Medicare. So this really comes down to where they can actually reach an agreement and how long it will take to get there. According to the Treasury Department, when they sent a letter last week to congressional leaders warning that the U.S. would hit the debt limit today, they said that they can use these so-called extraordinary measures and that'll hopefully keep the U.S. paying the bills and avoiding default, but this could end up going to the point where the U.S. runs out of cash as early as June. So that's really the current window we have for Speaker McCarthy and for Senate Democrats, Senate Republicans, and House Democrats, all these different factions to come together and reach an agreement. Right now, it's not clear where they're going to go. It looks like they potentially will have to reach a deal where there are some spending cuts in that, so that they can actually pass a debt ceiling legislation. But right now, there's no moving forward in a clear direction. So this is going to be something to keep a very close eye on as it continues.
So, Sarah, when we talk about extraordinary measures, can you give us an idea of what they are? And will Americans feel them in any way at this point?
You know, they really should not feel them in any way, no. So essentially what extraordinary measures are, it's kind of funny we call them extraordinary measures at this stage because they're supposed to be extraordinary because they're so infrequently used. They're supposed to be unusual. But these are becoming a part of the same process we go through every time we get closer to the debt limit and then hit the debt limit. So it's become more regular in recent years. But what these are is essentially the United States Treasury Department will start suspending certain investments at this time so that it can avoid running out of the cash necessary. And right now, the two that the Treasury Secretary named in her letter to Congress were the Civil Service Retirement and Disabilities Fund and then also the Postal Accountability Enhancement Act. So there's some funds going Postal Service funds, some retirement funds. But to keep in mind here when we talk about these, they're not going to be making the investments now. When an agreement is reached on the debt limit, that whole idea is that these funds will be then made whole. So at the end of the day, federal retirees and employees should not be affected in any way by these actions. Of course, that completely changes if there's no agreement reached on the debt limit.
So what are you watching for next?
I would love to see kind of where this negotiation actually goes in terms of what Democrats are willing to look at when it comes to spending cuts, but then also the reality, are Republicans going to have the numbers to even come to an agreement and move forward? So it comes down to where are those spending cuts likely to happen, and can we get the numbers to pass those? I don't think we're going to see a clean spending bill a clean debt ceiling bill move forward at this time. I don't think anyone's talking about that.
I just want to sort of point out that Janet Yellen issued a letter telling Congress this is what happened. We've hit the debt ceiling. And she sort of closes it by saying, you know, essentially, I respectfully urge Congress to act promptly to protect the full faith and credit of the United States. And there's a few other things in that last paragraph. You know, can we talk a little bit about the pressures that the Janet Yellen, the Treasury, you know, can exert on Congress to get them to hurry up and get this job done?
Well, I mean, this is not something we haven't seen just from Secretary Janet Yellen alone. The reality is we were looking at the debt ceiling and Congress had to pass an agreement in 2021, in December 2021. And in the months leading up to that agreement, Secretary Yellen sent a number of letters to Congress really laying out the ramifications of what happens if the United States hits the debt limit and then defaults and does not pay its bills. Because this really, while it's never happened before, as Joe has mentioned, and most people say that this absolutely cannot happen, period. If it did happen in the future, this would have global ramifications. It would send shockwaves across the global financial system. And so that is really where the Secretary has tried to warn Congress, don't even play chicken. Don't even get close to that point where it really becomes a greater concern at that time when we really do go to the point where it's a so-called X date and the U.S. can't pay the bills. Because even leading up to that point, we have seen the markets reflect that. We have seen just in 2011 when they weren't able to reach an agreement until the very last minute, there was a drop in the stock market. There was a downgrade to the U.S. credit rating, and billions of dollars were lost. It cost taxpayers billions of dollars, even though an agreement was eventually reached. So this puts the U.S. credibility at stake, and the Secretary has time and time again warned Congress not to do that. And this also comes after we've already had just a massive economic upheaval from the coronavirus pandemic. So that is another factor that has played out over the past couple of years. This would just add one more element of uncertainty to an already uncertain economy.
Sarah, thank you very much. Joe, before we let you go, just give us a bigger picture view of what you're looking at now, given these new economic numbers that have come out today.
Yeah, we're waiting always on the Fed. The next meeting is February 1st. Will it be a quarter or 50 basis point hike is the question in the market right now. If I'm looking at the economic data, I don't see how the Fed continues to raise at 50 basis points. They're getting to the point where they're going too far and risking another potential problem. The economy is softening. We all can see that from the data. So I would think that they would go to a quarter and then maybe even think maybe one more and then pause. But at this point, the market is afraid that they may go too far and cause new problems. So that's the biggest thing on the horizon. So we'll see what happens. Tomorrow's a big options expiration day, so that's always going to create some volatility as well.
Joe Saluzzi, it's always great talking to you. Sarah Ewald-Weiss, thank you so much for giving us some context and background. We're going to take a quick break. Stay with us. You're streaming CBS News.
Everybody wakes up in the morning and they are pelted with alerts that frighten them, news that agitates them. With this show, we have the time to explain what's going on. These migrants, they've been released. Explain the status that allows them to be released, to slow things down a little bit. What are the big sets of questions for China and its ambitions? Hackers are stepping up their attacks to extort victims. Let's start with easy. Who's attacking? Here's a deeper understanding of what's happening.
Prime Time with John Dickerson. Stream on the free CBS News app.
You ready?
A generation of kids opens up on CBS Reports.
I just want to be like a regular kid.
Their world, their struggles, their voices.
What if I was white?
A lot of people like to call names and make you feel ashamed for being proud of who you are.
Now streaming Gender.
I did not realize that you could change your gender.
Realizing how you feel.
You can be a boy, sometimes you feel like a girl, sometimes you feel like both.
Redefining who you are.
I identify as trans.
Gender fluid.
Non-binary and queer.
Is the idea of gender a thing of the past?
And to be yourself, always, no matter what anyone says, I love you.
Are the kids all right? Gender. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
When weather turns extreme.
States from the plains to the northeast are bracing for more than 2 feet of heavy snow.
Every second counts.
This is a monster winter storm.
CBS News and the Weather Channel bring you virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
There's a wrinkle in the forecast, the accumulating ice.
You'll have time to get prepared.
Take precautions before you head out.
Feel the forecast on the CBS Evening News with Nora O'Donnell.
Stories that inform.
You can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
An investigation is underway after 2 JetBlue planes bumped into one another at New York's JFK Airport yesterday. This comes after a recent close call at the same airport when 2 planes almost collided on the runway. Joining us now for more on this is CBS News transportation safety analyst and former NTSB chairman, Robert Sumwalt. Robert, good morning. Good to see you.
Glad, good to see you. Thank you very much.
So I guess the first thing we should say is that to a large extent, travel in the United States is fairly safe. It is safe. But what